Today, the nation pauses not for noise but for memory, for lives, for journeys. For voices that once shaped how America thought, felt, listened, and dreamed. For music that moved generations, to ideas that stirred debate, to stories that reached living rooms and futures imagined on glowing screens. Each of these figures left something lasting behind. Their passing does not arrive as a headline alone. It arrives as a quiet absence in classrooms, in concert halls, in pages once underlined, and in shows once watched with hope. This art is not about loss alone. It is about meaning, about what remains when the curtain falls, and why these names will continue to echo long after today. The news arrived quietly, without spectacle, as many of the most meaningful moments often do. On December 13, 2025, Carlton passed away at the age of 73, leaving behind a voice that once filled rooms with rhythm, warmth, and confidence. For fans, the loss felt personal. For music, it marked the closing of a soulful chapter that helped define an era. Carlton did not chase attention. His music simply found people. It played at family gatherings, on late-night radio, and through open car windows on summer streets. His voice carried a joyful strength that felt honest and unforced. It was the sound of celebration without excess, and feeling without performance. Born into a world shaped by church choirs and early rhythm and blues, Carlton's musical foundation was deeply rooted in gospel. Those early influences gave his singing a sense of conviction. Even at his most playful, there was weight in his delivery. Each note carried intention, shaped by years of listening before being heard. In the 1970s, as soul and funk became cultural forces, Carlton found his place. Among them, his recording of Everlasting Love introduced his voice to a wider audience. The song was tender and open, filled with longing that felt both youthful and timeless. It climbed the charts, but more importantly, it stayed with people decades later. It still sounds like a promise gently spoken. Those who worked with Carlton often described him as calm and focused in the studio. He did not rush performances. He believed that feeling mattered more than perfection. One longtime producer later shared, Carl never sang at a song. He stepped inside it. You could feel that he meant every word. That quiet commitment became part of his signature. As musical taste shifted, Carlton adapted without losing himself. He embraced funk's energy while keeping soul at the center of his sound. In 1981, he released She's a Bad Mama Jama. She's stacked, a track that radiated confidence and groove. The song was bold and playful, celebrating strength and pride with a beat that demanded movement. That record became a defining moment. It crossed genres and generations, playing in clubs, on radio stations, and later in films and commercials. Yet even at the height of its success, Carlton remained grounded. Friends recall him smiling more at the band than at the applause. He loved the groove. One bandmate recalled, the fame was just something that happened around it. Carlton's career was never about chasing trends. He followed feeling instead. When the spotlight shifted, he continued to perform, write, and record with the same sincerity. There were quieter years, but never empty ones. Music remained his language, even when the audience was smaller. In interviews, Carlton often spoke about music as a form of connection. He believed songs could lift spirits without preaching. If someone feels better after hearing it, he once said, then the song did its job. That simple philosophy guided decades of work. Beyond the charts, Carlton's influence lived in the artists who followed. Younger musicians cited his phrasing and tone as lessons in restraint and confidence. He showed that soul music did not need excess to be powerful. It needed truth. His passing was met with an outpouring of tributes. Fellow artists shared memories of kindness and professionalism. One singer wrote online, Carlton taught us that joy could be steady, not loud. His music raised generations. Fans echoed that sentiment. Posting clips of favorite songs and stories of where they first heard his voice. For his family, the loss was deeply personal. In a brief statement, a relative shared, Carl was the same at home as he was on stage. Gentle, thoughtful, and full of quiet laughter. We are grateful for the love people showed him through his music. The words reflected a life lived without pretense. Carlton's story is also one of resilience. The music industry is rarely gentle, and many voices fade before being fully heard. He endured changes in labels, trends, and expectations, yet his sound never lost its center. He trusted time more than noise. There was something reassuring about his presence. In a world that often moved too fast, his songs invited listeners to slow down, even while dancing. They carried a sense of balance, reminding people that joy could be confident without being loud. As the years passed, his music found new life through sampling, playlists, and rediscovery. Younger listeners, unaware of the charts of the past, responded to the same feeling older fans once did. The groove still worked, the warmth still held. Carlton never described himself as a legend, he spoke instead about gratitude. In later years, he often thanked listeners for keeping the songs alive. In many ways, that is exactly what happened. His work continued to breathe through memory and movement. On December 13th, the music world paused. Not in shock, but in reflection. His death did not feel sudden. It felt like a gentle closing of a door that had been open for a long time. One fan wrote, "His songs taught us how to smile through rhythm. That lesson stays." Carlton leaves behind more than recordings. He leaves moments of dancing in living rooms, of radios humming in the background, of confidence felt without explanation. His voice became part of everyday life, and that may be the highest achievement any artist can reach. As tributes continue to pour in, one truth remains clear. Carlton's music never demanded attention. It earned trust, it earned memory, and it will continue to play wherever soul music still reminds people who they are. In the end, his farewell is not silence, it is rhythm carried forward, it is joy remembered. Carlton will be remembered not just for the songs he sang, but for the feeling he left behind, steady, warm, and everlasting. The news was confirmed in the early hours, quietly passing through newsrooms and cultural circles alike. On December 17, 2025, Sir Humphrey Burton died, closing the life of a man who spent decades helping others listen more closely, not just to music, but to meaning. For many viewers, his face and voice were familiar in a gentle way. He did not dominate the screen, he guided it in living rooms across Britain and far beyond. Humphrey Burton became a calm presence who made classical music feel less distant and more human. Born with a deep curiosity and respect for the arts, Burton believed music was not something to be protected from people, but something to be shared with them. At a time when classical performance could feel formal or intimidating, he chose a different path. He spoke plainly, he listened carefully, and he trusted audiences to care if given the chance. As a broadcaster and producer, Humphrey Burton helped change how classical music appeared on television. He brought cameras closer to orchestras and explanations closer to viewers. Instead of assuming knowledge, he offered context. Instead of spectacle, he offered understanding. Those who worked alongside him often spoke of his patience. One longtime colleague recalled, Humphrey never rushed a moment. He believed that if you slowed down, the music would speak for itself. That belief shaped every program he touched. Burton's work was marked by clarity. When introducing a symphony or an opera, he focused not on complexity, but on feeling. He explained why a passage mattered, or how a composer's life shaped a sound. Viewers were not lectured, they were invited in. Through decades of broadcasting, he helped redefine cultural television. Classical music was no longer framed as distant or elite. It became personal. It became something families could watch together, learning as they listened. His calm voice became a kind of reassurance. In a fast-changing media world, Burton stood for steadiness. He believed that art deserved time, and that audiences deserve respect. Those values were rare even then, and they grew rarer with time. Recognition followed, though he never seemed to seek it. When he was knighted for his service to culture and media, those close to him said he accepted the honor with gratitude. But little changed. The work, to him, was always a point. Outside the studio, Burton was known as thoughtful. In private, he prepared carefully, listened more than he spoke, and treated musicians with deep respect. A conductor once said, he understood that music is fragile. He handled it with care. That care was visible on screen. As television evolved, Burton adapted without losing his values. New formats came and went, but his approach remained rooted in trust. He trusted the music, he trusted the audience, and over time, that trust was returned. Younger broadcasters often cited his work as a standard. They learned from his pacing, his language, and his restraint. He showed that explaining art did not mean simplifying it beyond truth. It meant choosing the right words. When news of his death spread, tributes followed from across the cultural world. Musicians, producers, and viewers shared memories of evenings shaped by his programs. One message read, he taught us how to listen. That is a rare gift. His family released a short statement asking for privacy. While thanking the public for its kindness, Humphrey believed deeply in sharing beauty. The statement read, we are grateful that so many people shared it with him. For viewers, his absence feels subtle but real. There will be broadcasts of great music, but fewer voices that explain it with such calm care. His work set a tone that is difficult to replace. Sir Humphrey Burton lived at the meeting point of education and elegance. He did not seek to impress, he sought to connect. In doing so, he changed how generations experience classical music through a screen. His passing marks the end of an era when cultural broadcasting moved at a human pace, when explanation mattered, when silence was allowed. Those values now live on in the programs he shaped and the minds he opened. In the end, his legacy is not only found in archives or honors, it lives in the quiet confidence of viewers who no longer feel shut out from great music. It lives in the idea that art is something to be shared, not guarded. As the final notes fade, Humphrey Burton is remembered not as a gatekeeper, but as a guide, a man who brought classical music home and left it there, waiting to be listened to again. The confirmation came without ceremony, carried in careful words across news pages and quiet conversations. On December 16, 2025, Norman Harold Podhoretz passed away, marking the end of a long and forceful life spent in the world of ideas, where sentences could provoke, persuade, and endure for decades. Podhoretz stood at the center of America's intellectual arguments. He believed words mattered, and he treated them with seriousness. Essays were not entertainment to him, they were tools, meant to challenge thought and shape direction. Born into a family that valued education and discipline, Podhoretz showed academic promise early. Books were not an escape but a calling. He moved through elite institutions with confidence, developing a sharp mind and a voice that refused to soften its edges. His rise as a public intellectual came at a time when America was questioning itself, culture, politics, and identity were in motion. Podhoretz did not stand apart from these shifts. He stepped directly into them, willing to argue in public and accept the consequences. Much of his influence came through his long leadership at Commentary magazine, where he served not just as an editor, but as a guiding force under his direction. The publication became a central platform for serious debate. Essays published there were discussed far beyond its pages. As editor, Norman Harold Podhoretz believed disagreement was not a weakness. It was a sign of engagement. He welcomed argument, sharpened it, and allowed it to unfold fully. Supporters saw clarity. Critics saw confrontation. Podhoretz saw purpose. Over time, his political views evolved. Once aligned with liberal ideals, he moved steadily toward conservative and neoconservative positions. This shift was not quiet. It unfolded publicly, through essays that explained his reasoning and challenged former allies. For Podhoretz, this evolution was not betrayal, it was honesty. He wrote openly about why his views changed, tying his thinking to events at home and abroad. In doing so, he mirrored the broader tensions of post-war America, where certainty often gave way to reassessment. His writing style was direct and unapologetic. He did not hide behind vague language. Each argument was meant to be understood, even when it was not accepted. That clarity made his work influential and often controversial. A fellow writer once observed, Norman never wrote to be liked. He wrote to be clear. That clarity defined his career. Whether readers agreed or not, they understood where he stood. Podhoretz's critics were many, and he never denied it. He welcomed challenge, believing that strong ideas required resistance. To him, consensus was less important than conviction tested in public. Outside the spotlight of debate, he was known to be disciplined and focused. Writing was treated as work, not inspiration. He revised carefully, argued precisely, and expected the same seriousness from others. As decades passed, his influence continued. Younger thinkers studied his essays not only for their conclusions, but for their structure. He showed how argument could be built patiently, line by line, without losing force. When news of his death spread, reactions reflected the complexity of his legacy. Admirers praised his courage and consistency. Critics acknowledged his impact, even while disagreeing with his conclusions. One public figure wrote, "You did not have to agree with him to feel his presence in every serious debate." His family released a brief statement, noting his lifelong devotion to thought and dialogue. Norman believed ideas were worth fighting for, it read. He lived by that belief every day. The words captured a life shaped by commitment to principle. Podhoretz never claimed to speak for everyone. He spoke for himself, clearly and repeatedly. In an age of shifting language, he held firm to the idea that meaning should not bend for comfort. His passing feels like the closing of a chapter in American intellectual life, a time when essays were read slowly, argued fiercely, and taken seriously, when disagreement was not dismissed, but confronted. Today, his books and articles remain. They are studied, debated, and challenged just as he would have wanted. His work continues to provoke thought. Long after the moment of writing has passed, Norman Harold Podhoretz leaves behind a legacy, defined not by agreement, but by engagement. He reminded a nation that ideas have consequences and that words, carefully chosen, can shape history. As the arguments quiet and the pages turn still, he is remembered as a man who believed deeply in the power of thought. His voice now belongs to the record, but the questions he raised remain alive. In that enduring conversation, Norman Podhoretz is not absent. He is present in every serious debate where ideas are treated not as noise, but as forces that matter. The confirmation came softly, like a signal fading at the edge of the screen. On December 16, 2025, Gilbert Cyril Gerard passed away, closing the life of an actor whose presence once made the future feel calm, steady, and worth believing in. For many viewers, Gerard was not just a performer, he was a guide. In a time shaped by uncertainty and rapid change, his work offered reassurance. He did not play heroes who shouted or rushed forward. He played heroes who paused, thought, and cared. Born into a life shaped by discipline and responsibility, Gerard carried those values with him from an early age. Before fame found him, he understood structure, teamwork, and quiet duty. These qualities would later shape the characters he brought to the screen. When audiences came to know him as Captain William Buck Rogers, they saw more than a science fiction lead. They saw steadiness. They saw a man who faced the unknown without fear, guided by reason and compassion. In a genre often driven by spectacle, Gerard offered something gentler and more enduring. His portrayal of Buck Rogers stood apart because it felt human. He made the future feel reachable, not threatening. His calm voice and thoughtful expression suggested that progress did not have to come at the cost of kindness. Behind the scenes, Gerard was known for his professionalism. He arrived prepared, listened closely, and respected the work of everyone around him. One longtime crew member later shared, Gilbert treated the set like a shared mission. Everyone mattered. That respect created trust, both on screen and off. Gerard never chased fame. He accepted it carefully, almost cautiously. Interviews were thoughtful, appearances were measured. He believed the work should speak louder than the noise around it. As television evolved, so did the expectations placed on actors. Gerard remained consistent. He chose roles that reflected his values and stepped away when the moment felt right. There was no rush to stay visible. He understood that presence did not require constant exposure. Fans often described how his performances made them feel safe. One viewer wrote online, "When Buck Rogers was on, the world felt less scary. Gilbert made the future feel kind." That sentiment appeared again and again across generations of viewers. His colleagues remembered him as steady and generous. A fellow actor once said, "Gilbert led by example. He didn't demand attention. He earned it." Those words echoed the quiet authority he carried throughout his career. As the years passed, his work found new audiences through reruns and rediscovery. Younger viewers, far removed from the era of the original broadcasts, still connected with his calm presence. The tone he set never felt outdated. Gerard's life away from the screen was private and grounded. He valued routine, reflection, and meaningful conversation. Fame did not define him, purpose did. When news of his death spread, tributes came in softly. Much like the roles he played, actors, fans, and critics alike spoke of his integrity. One message read, "He showed us that heroes don't have to be loud. They just have to be true." His family released a short statement asking for privacy and gratitude. Gilbert believed in kindness and responsibility. It read, "He carried those beliefs into every part of his life." The words reflected a man whose values never shifted. In an industry often defined by excess, Gerard represented balance. He reminded audiences that strength could be quiet and leadership could be gentle. His characters did not conquer the future. They navigated it. His passing feels like the end of a softer chapter in television history. A time when stories paused long enough to breathe, when heroes listened before acting, when hope was steady, not dramatic. Today, his legacy lives on in memory and reruns, in the quiet comfort his performances still bring. He helped shape a vision of the future that was thoughtful and humane. As the screen fades to black, Gilbert Cyril Gerard is remembered not for spectacle, but for reassurance. He showed that the future did not need to be feared. Sometimes it only needed to be believed in, and in that belief his presence remains calm, steady, and guiding. Long after the final signal has gone quiet,